Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that, well, cuts through all that noise to bring you the essential insights, the actionable stuff you actually need. Today, we're doing a deep dive that's, I think, really profound. It's going to challenge how we think about success, about being ready, about building the life we want. Seriously, get ready for a perspective shift. We're going to unpack some surprising truths that are kind of hiding right there in plain sight.
Indeed. And for, far too long, the story we tell ourselves is that growth, real success, it all requires starting with more. More money, more knowledge, perfect confidence, whatever it is.
Right, like you need the perfect setup.
Exactly. It's a powerful story. But today we're going to take that apart a bit. We'll explore this idea that real abundance, it doesn't start with grabbing more stuff, but with this fundamental internal shift, how we see and value what we already have.
And guiding us today is Start Where You Are. Learn to Work with What You Have by Kelvin W. Nathan. It's honestly more than just self-help. It feels deeper, more practical. Our mission here is to unpack what this philosophy really means in practice, moving beyond just nice sayings to actual shifts in mindset and, importantly, in action for you, the listener. It's about seeing and using the incredible resources you've already got, the ones we usually overlook.
Absolutely. The source gives us this really powerful framework. It helps us see abundance, not just as some far-off goal, but as a mindset we build every day. It's about attention, stewardship, creativity. It really urges us to look inward first, to check what we actually have, experiences, skills, before we automatically look outward for answers or missing pieces. And that inward look, that's where the real transformation kicks off.
Okay, so let's jump right into this because it really is the bedrock, the core idea. The book starts with this revelation. There is a sacred, often overlooked truth hiding in plain sight. You already have something worth building with. And the really crucial part, the kicker, isn't someday or when you get more, but right now, like this moment. That feels pretty radical compared to how we usually operate, doesn't it? Almost, counterintuitive.
It absolutely is. And it's fascinating to think why we miss this so often. Our culture, right from the start, basically conditions us to fixate on what feels just, out of reach.
Yeah, like the next promotion or that perfect Instagram life.
Exactly. The next breakthrough, those curated lives online. We're constantly, maybe subtly persuaded that until we get that thing or become that image, we can't really authentically start. This builds up that feeling of being behind or, missing something vital. We think readiness is some destination we magically arrive at after ticking all the boxes.
But it's not a destination.
No, and that's the point the source makes so powerfully. Readiness isn't this passive state you achieve. It's actually a decision, an active choice you make right now to engage with what is instead of always waiting for what might be.
So feeling like we're not enough, like we're missing something, that's not necessarily reality. It's more about how we've been trained to look past what we have.
Precisely. It flips the usual approach on its head. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or external validation, it's about seeing that you, right now, hold the first piece. Maybe an unassuming piece, but still the start of the miracle. That's a huge shift in agency.
Okay, so if that's the case, what does Nathan actually mean by what's in your hands? Is it just metaphorical?
No, not at all. And that's what's great. It's actually quite concrete. The book defines it as the tools you've been given, the experiences you live through, the voice you carry, the community around you, and even the wounds you've been healing from.
Wow, okay. So it includes everything, even the hard stuff.
Exactly. And what's really powerful there is the emphasis on seeing value in the very things we usually dismiss. We tend to discount our gifts if they don't look flashy, right? Or we ignore our stories because they involved struggle.
Because it was messy.
Yeah. But the source points out there's untapped treasure buried in the places we overlook. Hidden potential in our lived experiences, no matter how tough or unconventional. Think about it, the resilience you gain from hardship, the empathy from challenges, the unique view from taking a different path. These aren't weaknesses, they're assets.
That's really interesting, seeing those ordinary, even painful parts, not as roadblocks, but as raw material. Like a sculptor seeing the potential in a rough block of stone. So this isn't about settling then. It's not just saying, accept where you are and don't aim higher.
Not at all. Not in the slightest. It's about anchoring your next step in reality, not fantasy. It's not a call to just sit back. You still strive. You still grow. But it's about consciously, bravely embracing what you do have, even if it's not enough to build the whole vision just yet. And that shift, however small it seems, changes everything. You move from passively waiting for perfect conditions to actively creating with what's available now. You stop comparing your unique journey to someone else's highlight reel and start cultivating your own path. You become the architect, not just the observer.
Okay, so this idea that we do have something valuable right now,
Right.
it leads straight into confronting what the source calls the illusion of lack. This idea, maybe the most convincing lie we hear, is that we just don't have enough. And it feels so true, doesn't it? Because we've practiced thinking this way for so long, it's almost automatic.
It's definitely deep-seated, and its power comes from a few different angles, often working beneath the surface. First, there's the conditioning we get from day one.
Right, the checklists.
Exactly. Society hands us this endless list. More money, more knowledge, more confidence, connections, time, you name it. We're subtly told we're always one step short of being qualified, or deserving, or truly ready. It's this constant message whispering that we're incomplete until we get those external things, so we always feel less than.
And that constant conditioning, it must warp how we see things, right? It leads to a distorted perception.
Totally. Once your mind is trained, like a muscle, to notice what's missing, it just automatically ignores what is present. You could have a brilliant idea, a supportive network, a history of overcoming things, and still feel totally behind or inadequate because your focus is locked on to what's absent. It's like looking at a half-full glass and only seeing the empty part, missing the water that's actually there.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then this gets massively reinforced by comparison. We almost never evaluate our lives on their own terms. We instinctively weigh them against these curated snippets of other people's journey.
Social media is killer for that.
Oh, absolutely. We look at feeds, public successes, and convince ourselves others had it easier, started better, had a smoother ride. We completely miss the invisible costs they paid, the doubts they wrestled with, the effort behind the polish. And even if someone does have more in one area, their abundance isn't a threat to yours. It's just different. The real question isn't what they have, but what are you doing with what's in your hands?
So comparison just fuels that feeling of not being enough. But the illusion of lack also shows up as delay, right? Like we interpret waiting periods as failure.
Yes, exactly. We all have dreams that takes time, effort, commitment. And the length of that process can make us feel like we're constantly failing. Those waiting seasons, when things seem quiet or stalled, are especially dangerous if you're already thinking in terms of scarcity. We read silence as disapproval or stillness as stagnation.
But it might not be stagnation at all.
Precisely. The source makes this beautiful point. Life often grows roots before it shows fruit. That job that hasn't come through, the audience that hasn't gathered, the breakthrough that feels far off, it doesn't mean you lack something. It just means the harvest isn't ready yet. And crucially, even while waiting, there's still enough to begin, to nurture, to keep planting. Our culture, though, rarely teaches us to honor that quiet, unseen growth. We're obsessed with the big, shiny end result.
We love the success story, not the messy beginning.
Right. We forget the artist painting in obscurity for years, the entrepreneur selling from their car trunk. We see the final product and forget it started with humble tools and uncertain steps. If you can't learn to value the small things, you miss the whole point of abundance. It's about attention seeing potential even when something doesn't look like much yet.
And speaking of things not looking like much, lack also disguises itself as perfectionism, doesn't it? The idea that if everything isn't perfect, we shouldn't even start.
Oh, definitely. That belief whispers that unless we have everything lined up perfectly, we shouldn't begin. So we get stuck rehearsing, revising, retreating, always waiting for this elusive certainty. But the irony, as the book points out, is clarity rarely comes before movement. It comes through movement. You take the step, you stumble, you learn, you adjust. That process gives you insights that planning alone never could. Waiting for the right time often just keeps you out of sync with your own growth. Maybe the moment you're in now, as uncertain and messy as it feels, is exactly where you need to begin.
That's a challenging thought.
And there's one more piece to this illusion of lack, the emotional component. Shame. That corrosive inner voice telling you you've blown your chances, waited too long, your mistakes are too big, your background isn't right, your voice is too small.
Convinces you no one would care anyway.
Exactly. But shame is a liar. It cherry-picks moments from your past and replays them as proof against your future. The truth is, your life hasn't disqualified you. It has shaped you. What you've been through refined your voice. It didn't ruin it. What you survived isn't your disqualification. It's your credential. Living under that illusion of lack turns you into a collector of excuses. But that friction you feel between where you are and where you're going, that's not failure. It's an invitation. It's growth knocking. And that illusion dissolves when you bring in gratitude and action.
That's incredibly powerful. Okay, moving on to another barrier, let's talk about the myth of readiness. This belief that we have to be fully ready, perfectly prepared before we start anything big. It's so subtle, so deep, we barely question it. It sounds responsible, right? Wise, even. But you're saying it often masks fear. Fear of failure, judgment, the unknown.
That's absolutely spot on. And it's a crucial distinction. Readiness, the way we usually think about it, isn't really about practical preparation. It's mostly about feeling comfortable. And as Nathan points out, growth was never meant to be comfortable. This myth tricks us into thinking successful people waited until they were absolutely sure, until every I out was dotted. But the reality, it's usually the opposite. Most pioneers started before they felt ready. They launched ideas that were still rough, spoke before their voices felt strong, walked into rooms where they felt out of place. What set them apart wasn't readiness, but willingness to move anyway, despite the doubt. We see their polished success and assume that's where they started, completely missing the messy beginnings, the first drafts, the courage it took.
So waiting to be ready is really just the most reasonable sounding excuse for not doing anything. It sounds careful, but it's actually paralysis.
Exactly. It's a masterclass in disguising inaction as patience. The source is really clear. Readiness is not a prerequisite, it's a result. It's something you build after you start, not before. The more you do, the more prepared you become. You grow by doing, not by waiting for perfect clarity. You figure out what works by trying, experimenting, not by endless theorizing. Stepping forward, embracing that discomfort, that builds the strength and clarity people think they need beforehand. The path reveals itself as you walk it, not while you're standing still. Planning forever just keeps you out of sync.
So this myth creates a kind of false finish line that keeps moving. Like, if I just learn one more thing or get a bit more time, then I'll start.
Precisely. But that line always shifts. There's always another book, another course, another problem to solve first. So you end up constantly preparing, but never actually initiating. And the longer you wait, the bigger the fear feels, the higher the stakes seem. Eventually, you're not preparing for action anymore. You're just preparing to delay action more effectively. It's a clever trap.
It's a balance then. Learning and planning are important, but they have to serve the movement, not replace it.
Yes, absolutely vital distinction. Preparation should amplify momentum, not become a hiding place. Too often, it turns into this way to convince yourself, if I just do a bit more work behind the scenes, refine one more thing, then I'll be safe from failure or embarrassment. But perfection isn't safety, it's paralysis. There's no way around risking growth. It demands showing up, even when you feel unqualified. Think about those quiet revolutions. Starting a business with a borrowed laptop, going back to school while raising kids, writing your story with a shaky voice. Those are the real beginnings. They rarely happen under spotlights. They're built in the messy middle. Hashtag embracing the present and imperfect action.
It's so easy to just write off the present moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
To feel like it's too plain, too quiet, too unresolved to be, sacred or important. We're always looking ahead.
That's a really profound point, because the truth is, as the source says, transformation never begins in the future, it begins right here. And that requires a fundamental perspective shift. Think about it. Two people can be in the exact same tough spot. One sees opportunity, the other only limitation. One sees preparation, the other punishment. The situation hasn't changed, just their internal view. And that internal shift, how you frame things, that's literally where every meaningful start happens. Now, this isn't about, toxic positivity, pretending everything's great when it's hard.
Right, not ignoring the reality.
Exactly. Life is complex, often messy. But even in that tension, something valuable can be found. The real work is learning to hold both truth and hope in the same hand. It's asking, what if this season, uncomfortable as it is actually equipping me for something bigger I couldn't handle before? What if the friction isn't punishment, but preparation?
So stop treating now like it's just a waiting room. Like we're just killing time until the real thing starts.
Yes, we do that all the time, don't we? Once I get the promotion, once I have more money, once I figure it out, then I'll really begin. We trap ourselves in delay, thinking the present is just something to endure. But if you keep treating now as not good enough, you miss its invitation, its potential, its starting point. The present isn't blocking your future, it's the actual birthplace of it.
How do we actually cultivate that awareness, though? It sounds good, but how do you do it?
That's the key. That awareness is a skill, and it needs developing. It means consciously looking at your current job, even if it feels like a dead end, and asking honestly, what skills am I learning? What lessons? What hidden opportunities? It means looking at a quiet season and seeing it as space for building inner strength, not punishment for not being famous yet. It means facing struggles and asking, what resilience, what strength are they trying to forge in me? The present moment is always communicating. The question is, are we listening differently? When you change how you see the moment, you reclaim your agency to respond. You stop feeling like life is just happening to you and realize you have a say in what this moment becomes. So here's a question for you, the listener. What if this moment, right now, as uncertain and unfinished as it feels, is the exact place you're supposed to begin?
That's a powerful question.
Mm.
And it flows right into another common block. The idea that meaningful beginnings need ideal conditions. We think the soil has to be perfect before we dare plant anything important.
And that's just not how life works, is it? If you wait for perfect soil, you'll wait forever. The truth is, most good things begin in less than perfect circumstances. In fact, some of the most powerful seeds, big ideas, brave efforts get planted in the messy dirt of uncertainty, transition, or just ordinary hard days. What matters more than the perfect soil is the courage to plant something anyway, even if it feels small, clumsy, or vulnerable. We tend to romanticize perfect timing, waiting for some big sign.
Yeah, like a lightning bolt.
Right. But timing is usually rarely obvious. It's subtle, disguises a quiet nudge, an inner knowing. You don't get a guarantee, but you plant anyway, because the bigger risk is never planting at all.
So those imperfect conditions, they actually become teachers. They force us to grow in new ways.
They absolutely do. Imperfect soil teaches adaptability, patience, resourcefulness in ways perfect conditions never could. You have to pay closer attention, water carefully, shield things, innovate with what you have. You also learn that growth is often hidden, often slow, but it is happening. That seed is working underground long before you see anything break the surface. Waiting for the right conditions too often becomes this subtle form of procrastination dressed in the clothing of wisdom. It sounds smart to wait, but later never really comes, does it? When you dare to plant in imperfect soil, you make peace with reality. You stop waiting for a fantasy and start building something real in the world you actually live in. Think of those artists in obscurity, the entrepreneurs starting small they built despite the conditions.
Okay, that leads to another tough truth. Accepting that you will not have it all figured out before you begin. That pressure to know every step in advance is paralyzing for so many people.
And that's why the most lasting things are almost always built while walking. You start moving, and the path reveals itself as you go. Clarity isn't usually the prerequisite for movement, it's often the product of it. The deeper you go, the more you see nuances you couldn't have grasped from a distance. It feels scary, sure, the unpredictability, not having all the answers. But that's how real things get made. You learn to adapt, solve problems on the fly with courage, not just theory. You adjust course, try again after setbacks, stay flexible without quitting.
So fear's narrative that we need a perfect plan, it's just that, a narrative, an illusion.
It really is just an illusion. Fear wants safety over significance. It tries to convince you to pause, hide behind more prep, wait until the unknown becomes known. But what if the unknown isn't your enemy? What if it's the space where transformation lives? That's where you discover new parts of yourself, creativity, grit, resilience. Those don't wake up in safety, they ignite in motion. Building while walking means giving yourself permission to not have every answer, accepting that mistakes are not the opposite of progress, they're part of it. You don't have to look perfect. Honestly, people are often far more inspired by your willingness to keep moving than by your ability to look polished. Your vulnerability, being seen in process, that's powerful connection, not weakness. Think of any big innovation, messy beginnings. Lots of changes along the way.
It's funny how society loves the big reveal, the launch, the arrival. We focus on that shiny endpoint and overlook the smaller, quieter spaces where the real work happens.
And that's a dangerous blind spot, honestly, because the truth is, everything meaningful starts small. Think of a seed holding a forest, a spark starting a fire, a single decision, a napkin idea, a quiet conversation. That's how big things begin. Beginnings are sacred precisely because they hold potential. They carry the whole future inside them. What you're starting, however small, has value because it's real, it's yours. If you can't honor those small starts, you'll keep walking away from what you were meant to grow. The world might not applaud right away, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're in that uncomfortable, vulnerable, but essential part where effort outweighs evidence, but your foundation is being built. It takes humility to start small, but humility builds strength. Lasting growth is almost always slow.
And that connects so perfectly to the idea of the courage to be seen starting small. Because starting the quietly is one thing, but starting in view of others, that fear of looking unqualified, being judged, that's huge for people.
It truly is. Starting something new and doing it where people can see you can stir up deep fears. Looking unqualified, being judged, misunderstood, these often stop people cold. But being seen starting small is about rejecting the myth that you must be fully formed before you are valuable. It's an act of defiance, standing in that tension between your messy reality and your future vision and saying, this is where I am, and that's okay. That kind of honesty takes real strength. And authenticity builds way more credibility than any polished facade. Everyone you admire started somewhere unassuming. They weren't born confident. They started unknown, wrote drafts that failed, launched ideas that flopped, but they kept showing up. In being seen starting small, you give permission to others. You show them it's okay to be in process, to be messy, and maybe the hardest person to be seen by is yourself. We have these internal expectations of where we should be, but shame never fuels progress, it shrinks you. Honor your desire to grow. Have compassion for your own pace. These two ideas, honoring small starts and having the courage to be seen starting small, they reinforce each other. Small starts build confidence. Being seen validates them.
Okay, this journey of starting where you are brings us to this really interesting idea. These certain forms of wealth that don't announce themselves. Assets that often go unnoticed even by the very people who hold them. Quiet strengths, hidden reserves.
Yeah, and what's critical here from the source is how these silent assets are like the hidden infrastructure beneath everything lasting. But they don't show up on a resume or a bank statement, right? They're forged through experience, often tough experience. Let's unpack a few.
Okay.
First, gratitude. It subtly anchors you to what is working, even when things are tough. It protects your perspective from bitterness, helps you see good. It's not fake positivity, it's a disciplined focus.
Right. It changes where you put your attention.
Exactly. Then there's discipline. Not flashy like talent, but it has this quiet power. It's just showing up consistently, even when motivation fades. Discipline builds consistency, and consistency compounds. Ordinary efforts become extraordinary results over time. It's the daily grind that builds mountains.
Okay, makes sense.
Perspective, this one is usually hard-earned through difficulty, loss, time. It gives you that ability to step back, see things as part of a bigger picture, realize not every setback needs a huge reaction. It changes how you carry life's weight.
Turns burdens into lessons, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And self-trust may be the most crucial. Not born with it, you build it by keeping promises to yourself, however small. It's that inner voice saying, even without a map, I believe I can find my way. It anchors you when external validation is missing.
That feels foundational.
It really is. Humility creates space for learning, connection, grace. It's admitting you don't know it all, you're allowed to be imperfect. In process. Counterintuitively, it's a huge strength, keeps you aligned with truth.
Instead of pretending.
Right. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's getting up differently, learning the lesson. You often only see its power looking back, realizing what could have broken you actually built you. It makes you flexible, adaptable, willing to try again. And finally, patience. Not passive waiting, but active waiting. Trusting the process without forcing outcomes. Showing up, nurturing, preparing, even when nothing seems to be happening on the surface. These silent assets, unglamorous, uncelebrated, are the deep roots beneath anything that lasts. They aren't given, they're forged.
It's powerful to think of those as real wealth, internal capital. But let's flip that. We often think creativity needs wide open spaces, endless options, unlimited resources.
That's a really important assumption to question, because the source reveals this counterintuitive truth. Some of the greatest breakthroughs happen not in the presence of freedom, but in the presence of limitation. Constraints, time, money, energy, space, they aren't roadblocks, they're invitations. They sharpen our focus, force us to adapt, and push us to explore solutions we wouldn't have considered otherwise. They might narrow options, but they increase your clarity and spark ingenuity. Instead of being overwhelmed by infinite choices, you have to ask sharper questions. What can I do with exactly what I have? What matters most here? Where's the opportunity in this limit?
So limitations don't just stifle, they can actually deepen engagement and force a kind of creative focus.
They absolutely do. Constraints force that engagement. They make you resourceful in ways comfort allows us to get lazy. They wake up parts of the brain. Comfort puts to sleep. You become more intentional, make tighter choices, let go of perfectionism, focus on impact. History is full of examples. Iconic creative works, technological advances, entrepreneurial ideas born from people who didn't have everything they thought they needed. They treated the constraint as fuel. Plus, constraints build character, patience, persistence, humility, flexibility. The pressure can feel uncomfortable, sure, but discomfort is not the enemy of creation. Often, it pushes you into new territory.
And it makes sense. When resources are tight, You're forced into hard choices, which brings clarity. You have to prioritize ruthlessly.
Exactly. When you can't do everything, you're forced to choose what matters most. You stop overcomplicating, let go of the unnecessary. Sometimes having less helps you create something purer, more focused, more impactful. Simplicity has power, often born when extravagance isn't an option. And it's not just external limits, even emotional constraints, pain, confusion, doubt can be entry points for authentic, resonant work. The takeaway for the listener is try reframing your own limitations. Ask, what are these boundaries teaching me? What new path might this limit be pointing towards?
It's so easy to daydream about the future, isn't it? And kind of dismiss right now as just a placeholder, something to get through. But
Mhm.
what if, and this is a big what if, the way we treat now actually determines the future we're building?
That really is the heart of becoming a steward of the now. Stewardship means care, management, attention, responsibility. It means looking at the time, energy, relationships, resources you have right now and choosing intentionally to treat them as valuable, not dismissing them because they seem small or imperfect. That current job, that small apartment, that tiny audience, they are not voids, they are classrooms, they are assignments, each offering lessons and growth. How you handle them now determines if you're building capacity for more. And stewardship extends to the invisible things too, your attitude, attention, habits, follow through, integrity, things nobody might compliment you on, but they form the silent infrastructure of your future.
So it's about purposeful momentum, not just frantic activity.
Exactly. Huge difference. Movement is mere activity. Momentum is genuine progress. Stewarding the now builds alignment, ensuring your daily actions connect to your bigger purpose. That creates compounding impact, turning mundane tasks into meaningful steps. And crucially, this changes how you handle discouragement. When things go wrong, setbacks happen, stewardship says even this moment, however disappointing, is worth something. It teaches you to learn from disappointment without letting it define you or derail everything. That's maturity. It gets you places talent alone can't. How you treat now is building your future.
What's interesting, too, is that the journey isn't always straightforward. There's that uniquely difficult middle after the initial excitement wears off, but way before the end goal. That's where doubt creeps in, right?
You've really hit on something critical there. The middle isn't a sign you're failing. It's a necessary passage. It tests your resolve, your commitment, in ways the beginning never does. At the start, you're fueled by excitement, novelty. But as time and effort pile up without the immediate rewards or recognition, it's easy to wonder if you missed something, if you're on the wrong track. The temptation to just quit gets really loud. But faith in the middle isn't about ignoring reality. It means consciously choosing to believe something important is happening beneath the surface, even when there's no external proof yet. This kind of faith isn't naive. It's disciplined, quiet. It draws strength from commitment to purpose, not immediate results. The middle is rarely celebrated, but it's where character is built, endurance is forged, perspective is shaped. It's where you learn to sustain what you only knew how to start.
And that's key, because progress doesn't always look like moving forward in a straight line, does it?
Not at all. Sometimes progress is just refusing to go backward. Sometimes it's holding steady when everything feels shaky. Sometimes it's just showing up again and again, even if the steps feel tiny. The middle teaches you that consistency is a form of faith. It's where transformation deepens, roots grow stronger, where you learn to live in that tension between vision and reality. So if you, the listener, are in that middle space right now, quiet, uncelebrated, formative choice, you are definitely not alone. It's crowded with quiet builders, creators, dreamers fighting fatigue, holding on to hope, building without applause. Your job isn't to rush through it, it's to stay in it with grace, learn its lessons, let it teach you things you couldn't learn anywhere else.
There's a fascinating paradox this source introduces next. Seems almost counterintuitive. Moving forward requires more than effort. It requires release. That suggests you have to let go of something before you can receive more or expand.
That's such a powerful and often missed truth. We carry so much unquestioned weight, outdated beliefs, inherited expectations, old goals that don't fit anymore, routines, relationships, even identities that feel safe but aren't fulfilling. We hold on tight, not always because it's good for us, but because it's familiar. It gives a false sense of safety. But the key insight is, what is familiar isn't always what is right. Letting go isn't quitting or weakness. It's a conscious choice to release what no longer serves your future, to stop pouring energy into what's misaligned. It's an act of faith creating space for something new, something better to come in. Often the hardest part isn't losing the thing itself, but the fear of what will fill the space it leaves behind. It's that willingness to trust the unknown more than the comfort of what you've outgrown, stepping into uncertainty, believing something better will emerge.
So it requires real honesty with ourselves, confronting those comfort zones.
Absolutely. You have to look hard at what you're holding on to, where your energy is going, and ask courageously, is this still mine? Is this still true for me? Is this taking me where I want to go? There's often grief in letting go, even if it's the right thing. Grieving what was and maybe the idea of what could have been. But on the other side of that grief, clarity, openness to receive what's truly aligned. And often, the deeper work is profoundly internal, letting go of perfectionism, resentment, guilt about the past, or not being further along. Those internal weights are often heavier than any external burden. When you do this internal release, you stop feeling so burdened. You start moving with more freedom. The point isn't readiness, it's willingness. Willingness to trust that releasing something opens space for something better suited to who you are now and who you're becoming.
Okay, this whole journey seems to build towards this really powerful idea.
Yeah.
Multiplying what you have. And the source puts it so simply. Multiplication does not begin with abundance. It begins with attention. That totally reframes how we think about growth.
What's revolutionary there is understanding that the secret to increase lies not in accumulation, but in activation. It's not about gathering more stuff. It's about intentionally using what you already have, skills, resources, network, time, voice, in a way that creates value beyond its current form. One really powerful, maybe counterintuitive way to multiply is through contribution. When you start offering what you have to serve others, solve their problems, support their journey, you tap into something bigger than just productivity. Generosity really does multiply. But before you scale, you need intention. And before intention, clarity. You have to ask, what are you multiplying for? What's the why behind wanting more? What's the purpose?
And it's also about getting creative with existing resources, right?
Right.
Not just waiting for new ones, working with what's already there.
Precisely. Reimagining how to use what you've got. That old idea you dropped, that small platform, that overlooked connection. They're not dead ends. They're starting points.
Right.
Your life right now is full of seeds waiting for attention. Your voice as a tool is a multiplier, too. Every time you share a story, offer encouragement, speak truth, you're multiplying your influence, which is about impact, resonance, not fame. Leaving people better than you found them. Collaboration is another big one, combining different gifts and views to create something new, something impossible alone. And energy alignment, directing your limited energy where it counts most. Saying no to good things to say yes to the right things, the ones that fit your purpose.
What often gets missed, I think, in chasing multiplication is the quiet power of plain old consistency.
Oh, absolutely. Multiplication doesn't always happen in dramatic moments. It happens through repetition. One effort might not show much, but hundreds, thousands of small efforts stacked up over time. That shifts the landscape, builds momentum. Consistency also builds self-trust in a way motivation alone can't. Every time you keep your word to yourself, honor a small commitment, you strengthen that inner confidence, that reliability.
And the results often take time, involving delayed gratification.
Yes. The big results often show up long after the work has been done, after those invisible efforts compound. Growth is often silent, transformation slow, but when it arrives, it has real power. This applies to incremental improvement, too. Excellence isn't usually about grand gestures. It's mastering the basics, refining small details consistently, and it's huge for character building. Every choice of integrity, kindness, perseverance shapes who you become, builds an identity you can't fake overnight. Breakthroughs. They're rarely lightning strikes. They're the tipping point of hundreds of unseen moments of action, finally reaching critical mass. It's compounding effort, not magic. And finally, grace and resilience. Missed today, stumbled, just start again. The goal isn't perfection, it's staying engaged. Momentum is the refusal to quit, sticking with it. The key takeaway for you, the listener, the life you want is not built in one leap. It is built in the thousands of small steps you take when no one's watching.
That flows so perfectly into the final idea, living from overflow. When what used to feel like constant striving starts to feel like natural expression, moving from effort to embodying.
That state, yeah, it's not from lack, but from a deep internal place of genuine fullness that beautifully spills outward. Living from overflow doesn't mean life is perfect. It means your well is no longer empty. You're not running on fumes trying to build from depletion. It's the result of deep alignment values, actions, rhythm and harmony. Energy stops leaking. You lead your life with purpose, not just reacting, a clear sign. You start naturally giving not to earn or prove something, but because you genuinely have something to offer. Wisdom, peace, insights start flowing outward.
So it becomes sustainable, not just a burst of effort that burns out.
Exactly. It's built on deeper ground with margins, self-awareness. You learn to rest without guilt, protect your energy, say no to good things for the right things. It brings a deeper, more organic gratitude, not forced, just arises because you're not in survival mode. You notice beauty, grace. It marks a new kind of growth, not fighting to arrive, but sustaining, refining, deepening from wholeness. It's where legacy thinking starts, looking beyond yourself, actions rippling out. It provides reserves for challenges. Life is seasonal, and overflow gives you the inner tools, the foundation, to navigate tough times with grace, weather storms without collapsing. Ultimately, the truth is, you are not meant to constantly pour from an empty cup. You are meant to build something sustainable, something that reflects truth, something that feels like peace. Hashtag outro for
Wow, that was really insightful. A deep dive into Kelvin Nathan's Start Where You Are. We went from seeing we already have something to build with, to busting those myths about lack and readiness. Then embracing the present, taking imperfect action, honoring small starts, uncovering those silent assets, and seeing constraints as creative fuel. And finally, sustaining it all stewardship, faith in the middle, letting go, multiplying, and living from that place of overflow.
It really is a powerful shift, isn't it? The core message is so clear. Real abundance, real progress. It doesn't start by chasing more stuff. It starts by recognizing, stewarding, activating what's already here, already in you. It's not a one-off thing. It's this continuous, intentional engagement with your reality, turning it from just a waiting room into the actual launch pad for your dreams.
So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you, our listener. If the miracle really starts with that first piece in your hands, what small, maybe unconventional first piece are you overlooking right now? Something that could unlock your next level of growth, but maybe you're dismissing it because it doesn't look like a proper beginning. Take a moment, rethink your definition of ready, and then maybe commit to identifying just one silent asset, one thing in your hand that you can start working with consistently, courageously, starting today. We genuinely believe you have what it takes.